This is Bill. Bill looks content, but inside he is anxious because of his finances. He thinks he makes good money, but it has started to feel like he doesn't. Bill has heard good things about a financial tool called a budget. So Bill, out of desperation, decides to build a budget. Good for Bill, trying to take care of his financial and emotional well-being. To begin, Bill adds up all of his income for each of the last 3 months. Since Bill has 2 jobs, he does this by looking at his pay stubs, his online payroll statements, and he racks his brain for any and all cash payments he has received. He does not use his direct deposit because he wants to know his actual income before taxes, before his medical premiums are paid, before his retirement payments come in. Once he has that all written down, he can move on to the next step. He adds up all of his expenses for each of the last 3 months. This is not just what he spent, but this includes what he should have paid and did not or could not pay. They are all expenses over the last 3 months. He does this by reviewing his bank and credit card statements, using receipts he collected, and racking his brain for cash payments he made to people, including little tips. Once his expenses for each of the last 3 months is written down, he can move into the next step. Compare his income to his expenses. Initially, it's a little overwhelming for Bill because there is so much to observe and he is not sure how to make sense of it or even where to begin. But one glaring fact stands out. His expenses far outweigh his income for 2 of the last 3 months. Now Bill knows why he walks around with a knot in his stomach. To help him understand why this is happening, Bill decides to break out his expenses in a way that he can understand them. First, he separates out the debt. 2 very surprising expenses jump out. The medical expenses explain why Bill feels like he does not have enough money in October. If he didn't have that surprise expense, he would have been under his income. But it doesn't fully explain December. So Bill looks for other expenses in December that seem different than the other months, and 3 very obvious characters identify themselves. It's December. Friends, family, debt, they all gather for seasonal glee. Now, while Bill is still feeling surprised, his anxiety is actually dissolving because he begins to feel confident as he sees that he can get on top of his finances. These are all things he can manage over time with a budget. He can start using the money, for example, that he makes instead of credit cards and other debt because he can use money left over from months like November to pay for months like December. Bill is really glad he wrote it all down so that he could highlight how to tackle his deteriorating emotional state. With this knowledge in hand, Bill now begins to tackle a budget. He decides that the people who are always going to get paid no matter what, even if he cannot afford all of his bills, the people who are going to get paid no matter what are himself, the government, and his church. Paying himself will hopefully make surprise expenses like medical emergencies be less of a burden in his future. But savings is another topic for another day. He writes down the first 3 line items of his budget right here. He moves on to the next step to finish assigning where his money will go. Bill knows that his total income minus his priorities is called disposable income. That is the money he needs to live on. He takes an average of the last 3 months of income because he needs to start somewhere. Then he subtracts out his priorities. This leaves him with the money he has to spend as his disposable income. On the one hand, he has his priorities. And on the other hand, his goal is for his disposable income minus his monthly expenses to be 0. So with his priorities in hand, he writes down his first swag at assigning where all the disposable income will go. He makes sure that he is assigning money where he has expenses. So while he may not go to the big box warehouse this month, when he goes in a couple of months, he will have cash to spend instead of using debt. He makes sure that his medical debt is getting paid down by assigning money to it each month as well, instead of when it springs up on him in an emergency. But his disposable income minus his expenses is less than zero. That means that he either needs more money coming in or less money going out. Bill already works 2 jobs. He doesn't want to work anymore. So he decides to try spending less for now. His second attempt, after making some adjustments to the dollar amounts, now leaves Bill with a final number greater than 0. So Bill needs to reassign that money into the budget so that his disposable income minus expenses is 0. Bill makes one more round of iterations to his planned spending for the month. And now it is perfect. Bill feels confident. But Bill has only finished writing down his monthly budget. He has not yet finished the process. So Bill moves into the next and very important step. Bill needs to find ways that fit his personality to track himself to his budget. This step is not to start tracking himself. This step is to figure out how he will track himself each month moving on from here. After some careful thought about where Bill thinks he could have problems sticking to his budget, he decides that he is going to only use cash for restaurants. He will take out his restaurant budget in cash at the beginning of each month. When the cash is gone, no more restaurants. In fact, Bill decides he is so committed to his new norm that if the restaurant does not accept cash, he will find a different restaurant. He will also compare his bank app statement to his monthly budget at the end of each month to see how he's performed, and he's going to make adjustments that make sense at that time to his budget. Finally, he will confirm each month that he is making at least $550 per month from his second job until his credit card, his student loan, and his medical debt are all paid back. He can't live without it right now. So it's important that he monitors that dollar value to make sure he's making enough. Now Bill's budget is ready to use. Now he can confidently move forward and spend according to his budget, tracking himself each month. Bill is glowing. Congratulations, Bill. Go ahead and subscribe so you do not miss more of Bill's journey and other illustrations of the process. And here's my disclaimer. Also, I'm adding a link to a couple of other episodes that explore these principles as well as other financial principles. Really appreciate your time. Thanks, everyone.